Okay, so the quiz on Thursday, it's going to be a Canvas quiz. There are 5 questions and they're all multiple choice. Now, just like the other quiz that we took on the trig equations, you have to show work for each one of the questions. So, for example, if you take a look at, say, so like on number 1, this only has the answers here. Now, I actually put the work on the next page for numbers 1 and 2. So if we just stay on this page and I go to number 3, notice all of this work for number 3. This is what I want to see on your scratch paper. So no work, no credit. So remember, yes, you're going to get, each question is, I don't know if we're going to do it as 20 points each because the work is worth part of the points. But there's 5 questions. So when you're showing me your work, like for example, number 3 needed you to use law of cosines first. Now, I don't need to see that you've written this. You could go right to this step, and then if you wanted to, you could probably eliminate this and then just go to whatever the rounded answer was. But I do need to see what you're keying into your calculator, because what's going to happen is the biggest difficulty you're going to have is maybe you hit the wrong button. So I'm not sure if we're going to go back and give partial credit, but let's say you wrote all of this down perfectly, but then maybe when you went to key something in, something went wrong with your calculator, and then you ended up getting the wrong answer here. Now, luckily for you, it's multiple choice, so as soon as you see you're not getting the right answer, you should probably go back and double check that you've keyed this in your calculator correctly. Now, this particular question, when you're doing law of sines, you could actually do this one continuous in your calculator. I would just use a bunch of parentheses. Now, once you find this first side length, then from there you don't need to do law of cosines again. Then you're going to do law of sines. Now, again, like I said, notice I've got angles on top, but when I did it in the notes, the way I set up my proportions were this, and I put the sign on the bottom, and then then the side length on the top. Again, remember, you're cross multiplying. So essentially this step here is going to be the same whether you put the side on the bottom or the top. So when you go to check your answers, the answers are all the same. The only difference is when I taught this lesson this year, all of these should be flip-flopped. But again, it doesn't matter. So if you're going to go ahead and do your quiz the way that I've done it in the review, that's fine also. So then once you find your angle, then from here, then you're going to go ahead and find the third angle. Now, just to review, so for example, let's go to the work where number 1 is, I guess. Now, when you're given the quiz, pictures are not drawn for you. Let's go to number 1. to, can you still see my iPad? Is it on this
Yes.
first example? Okay. So let me go through, I've added a few things here. And here's number one. Notice this is the ambiguous case. So my given information, I was given an angle, a side, and a side. So if I go this way, it spells ASS, but if I go this way, it spells SSA. Either way, this is the one that you need to check for either 0 triangles, 1 triangle, or 2. Now, as soon as I do my first proportion, so if I go ahead here and I took the side that was across from the angle I had, that's in my first fraction. Now, if you did it like I did in the notes, you would have had it set up as 27.23 over the sine of 29.72 equals, and then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 41.45 over sine of b. Once you do the cross products, you end up with this row right here. Again, your goal is to isolate sine of b, so I'm dividing both sides by that 27.23. Remember, whenever you're looking for an angle, you're going to do this inverse, sine to the negative 1. And then I ended up with 48.995. Now again, just check the multiple choice answers and you're going to see what place you need to round to. So what you can do when you're doing this scenario, when you need to check, so obviously I did not get an error, so this option is out. So now I'm down to, do I only end up with 1 triangle or do I have to find the information for 2? Now, what you can do is after you find your first angle, you could continue the problem and just finish up triangle number 1. So once you do that, you would take the 2 angles you have, so the one you just found and the one that was given, add them, and subtract from 180. That's the missing third angle. Then from there, you need to find the side across from that angle. So again, you're going to do another law of sines problem. And then now I have the 2 missing angles and the missing side. Now, once you finish that part, now you're going to go back and check to see, could there have been a second triangle? So in order to do that check, you're going to go back up to step number 1. You're going to take this angle that you found and you're going to subtract it from 180. So I'm going to subtract 48.995 and I get 131.005. Now, potentially, this could be my new angle B for my second triangle. But what I need to do is to see if there's enough degrees left for a third angle. And the way that I check that is I take this newly formed B, I add it to the original A that was given to me, and I get 160.725. And then what I need to do is if this number right now is bigger than 180, I would stop and say that there's only 1 triangle. But because this is less than 180, then I know that there is a second triangle. So what I'll do is 180 minus 160.725, and then what remains now is my third angle, which is angle C. So this one up here was the new angle B. This is now the new angle C. And now to find side length C, I do law of sines. with that new C. Because recall that we were given angle A, we were given little a, and we were given little b. These three things from the original given are going to be the same for both triangles. What's going to be new is the angle B, angle C, and side length C. See what else we have here. So then example 2. Now, the things that again, you're not going to be given a picture. The way that the question is going to be written is it'll say capital A equals 112.8. I got a decimal point wrong. 112.8 degrees. Then they'll have little b equals 7.28, and these are meters. And then little c, lowercase, 32.2 meters. So when it's the lowercase, it's the side length. When it's the capital letter, it's the angle. So again, draw something. Put the letters around, capital A, capital B, capital C. Remember, the lowercase a is across from the capital A, little b is across from B, and little c across from C. And then you can added that I wanted to talk, and these are the notes from 8.2, and these are suggested steps to take when you're solving the law using law of sines and law of cosines. So let's just go through them. So case number 1, this is what we covered in 8.1, and this was the side angle or angle side angle. We might have also seen it as angle side. So step number 1 is to find the remaining angle. So notice you're given 2 angles and a side. So to find the third angle, you're just going to add the 2 that are given and subtract from 180. And that's that triangle sum formula. Then to find the remaining side, you're going to do law of sines. So that was what we did in 8.1. So that was either you're given 2 angles and a side, so angle, side, or depending on how you're drawing your triangle, side, angle. We also did examples when it was the included side, so angle, side, angle. These are the steps you take. Find the missing angle by adding 2 and subtracting from 180, and then finding the missing side, both of them, by doing 2 law of sines problems. So you do this twice, 2 times. And the order doesn't matter. Okay, then the next case that we saw, this is the ambiguous case. Remember, this is the ASS. This is the only time that you could possibly get no triangles, 1 triangle, or 2 triangle. All the other cases only give you 1 triangle. So this is the only scenario when you have to check to see if it's no triangle, 1 triangle, or 2 triangles. Now, the no triangle is easy because as soon as you try to do it on your calculator, you're going to get an error. So as soon as you try to do something and you see error on your calculator, you know that in step number 1, then you know that it's no triangle. Now, you'll definitely be able to get 1 triangle if you don't get the error. Then what you have to do is check to see if there is a possible second triangle. So you will have questions like this. The easiest one is no triangle. This is only when you're given 2 sides and an angle, and it's not the included angle. Then the other 2 cases with the pink star, this was 8.2. So when you're given side angle side or side. Now, for these, it's important that the order that you do these. So for example, when you're doing side angle side, you're going to first find the missing side using law of cosines. So what you'll do is the angle that's given, that's the side that's across from that, that's the first side you find. Then from there, it's important that you read this, that you need to find the smaller of the remaining angles first. And then you can use your triangle sum. However, for side, you need to find the largest angle first. And then from there, use law of sines to find the remaining the remaining angle, and then use the triangle sum. So make sure on these 2, the order is important. So again, it's open note, so if you want to have this little steps to follow nearby, you might want to have the formulas written down on a piece of paper, whatever's going to work best for you. Again, though, you need to show work in order to get credit on the quiz. So again, the quiz has 5 questions. They're all multiple choice. However, there will be a homework assignment opened up where you have to submit your work. Now let's go back to the review. So I just wanted to show you these screens and just know this just came from the screenshot of the notes. So you have these already. So let's go back to the review is you can have these formulas written down. This is actually just a screenshot this is from the 8-1 notes. So remember when you're doing law of sines, now the way that I did my work, I flip-flopped all these. So my work would have had something like this. But I know when I taught this year, I did it this way. So these are the same thing. Now, remember when you're doing law of sines, you're only working with 2 of them at a time. So like I would do those 2, or I could do this one and this one, which is here, or I could do these 2 together because you're creating a proportion. So if you want to have the formulas written down, have them written down, ready to go. Now from 8, again, this was the law of cosines. And again, this is just a screenshot from the notes. Now, one thing that I did when you look at, I believe it might be number 4 or 5 that's worked out. So these are the formulas that you're going to memorize. Now, if you prefer to manipulate the equation and have it solved for, say, cosine A, cosine B, or cosine C, because the problem, when you're solving for, say, cosine C, you can't do this continuous in your calculator. You're going to have to, like square this, square this, square this, then move these 2 over to this side, move this one to this side, and then divide both sides by the negative 2ab. So one thing that you could do is if you wanted to take each of these and rearrange them before you start using them, you could do that ahead of time. So for example, if I take the last one, c squared equals a squared plus b squared minus 2ab times cosine c. Let's say I want to isolate cosine c and get cosine c all by itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move a squared. So now I have c squared minus a squared equals b squared minus 2ab cosine c. Next, I'm going to move the b squared. Try to move everything away from cosine c. And then I can do it continuous in my calculator. Now again, this is optional. You don't need to do this, but it would be kind of beneficial if you already have this done ahead of time. And then next, I'm still trying to isolate this. So next what I'm going to do is divide both sides by negative 2ab. So then I get c squared minus a squared minus b squared over negative 2 times a times b equals cosine c. Now, another thing I can do is to get rid of this negative in the bottom. I could multiply top and bottom by negative 1 or divide it by negative 1. And then this will become, when I distribute it, this will become negative, positive, positive, and this will become a positive. So now I have a squared plus b squared minus c squared over 2 times a times b equals cosine c. So now it's a little bit easier because now to find cosine c, if I already have this done ahead of time, I could just key in a squared plus b squared minus c squared and then divide that by 2 times a times b. Definitely put parentheses though. Otherwise, what you'll have to do is step by step, how I did it when I taught the lesson. So if you want to rearrange all 3 of these ahead of time and say solve for cosine A, cosine B, and say what cosine C equals, then it might be a little bit easier to do it in your calculator. But it's up to you. Then the other thing that I just added was a picture of